Okay, so the date of this chart is January 24, 2001.
Yes.
Sam.
You're not going to love me for this, but all the charts I got are in the 2000s range.
All the charts you got were in the 2000s range?
Yep.
I can send mine.
Don't tell. I don't want to know who's sending what charts from when. Listen, people, look, pause before you send things to the group chat. I don't want to know who the charts come from because it defeats the purpose of giving a blind chart analysis. That's the first thing. Yes, deep sigh for Mychal. Second thing is, these are babies. And as a rule of life, we don't read the charts of babies. Please forgive me for saying that, but there are very real karmic implications for that. We do not read the charts of children. They haven't even lived yet. How do you expect for me to sit here and take upon myself the karmic burden of saying that this child born in 2001 will not get married, that this child will not have success in their job, that this child will be wealthy or not wealthy? No, that is not the way. So please submit other charts to Sam, charts for people for whom the universe will not backhand slap me for having prophesied over their life and they haven't even yet lived.
I've got a few more in.
Thank you.
You inspired the crowd.
We do not read the charts of children. Date. Sam?
February 20, 1996.
Oh, wow, 4 years. Anyway, it's fine. Time?
3:44 a.m.
Oh, wow. Let me add 4 years to it. Please.
San Francisco, California.
Oy vey, my darling hearts. Flesh of my flesh. How I love you all. Event type?
A female.
Okay. All right, so I will do the workup on it. The first thing that we do, as you all know, where's Christina?
I am right here.
Would you like to do this piece?
Okay.
Okay, so what do I do first?
You locate the ascendant.
Good, which is at 3 degrees, Capricorn, 23 minutes. Good. Now next, what do you do?
The D3, which I don't know. Sorry.
The D3 is going to be Capricorn as well. I'll explain that later. And then the D12, if you don't know the D3, you don't know the D12. The D12 is going to be the next sign after Capricorn, which is Aquarius. So we have Aquarius there. And then the next thing that we do after we've done the D3 and the D12 is what?
The hidden aspects.
I look for hidden aspects.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Or I look for hidden stuff, yeah.
So you start with the antition and contrantition.
Antition or ant. We could just do ant and con and. Okay, so here, what do we end up having for that? We have 3 degrees Capricorn equals 27 degrees of Sagittarius. So we quickly look and we see anything at 27 Sag, no. Anything at 27 Gemini, the answer is also no. So we have not available. Antition and contrantition are very important. You all should know how to do it. because it is the most basicest form of astrology, antition and contrantition. Next here is what do we do now, Christina?
Declination.
DECL, the declination is, what do we have by declination? Do you see anything interesting?
It is, looks like it's parallel Jupiter.
It's most assuredly parallel Jupiter. Very smart on you. Jupiter parallel ASC. Good. Anything else?
No.
No, it's too far. Okay, good. Next, is there anything else that we do hidden aspect wise?
The octiles.
The octiles, I'll just tell you that 3 degrees of the cardinal signs is 18 degrees of the fixed signs. Do we see anything here at 18 fixed? No.
No.
No, most assuredly not. So that too is not available. Good. Now, after I do my hidden stuff, what is the other thing I do?
Now you spot the aspects to the ascendant.
Now I do the obvious stuff, yes, which would be to do aspects to the ASC. And I'll quickly do that. We have 3 degrees Capricorn. So I hold on to that 3 degrees in my mind and I rush around the chart looking for numbers close to it. Jupiter is no, this one, Neptune is no, Uranus is, but it's in signs that are next to each other. So that's also a no. The Mercury is a no. The Sun is a yes. The Mars is a yes. So we have the Sun, Mars sextiling our ascendant, and that is the Dexter sextile of the Sun and the Mars to the ascendant. So we have Sun/Mars -60-ascendant. Sun/Mars -60/ascendant. So we have that. And the Moon is a what? The Moon is a no. The Saturn is a no, but this Moon Saturn is giving me all the feels. This Venus is a no. It's too wide, far too wide for our liking. But I see it all the same, but I'm not going to write it down. This South node is a no. Nothing on this entire side. This North node is also a no because we don't do that with the nodes. This Pluto is a no because they're in signs adjacent to each other. And then this part of fortune is also a no. In this chart, we have what is known as Kala Sarpa Yoga. Kala Sarpa is the serpent of time within Vedic astrology. Kala Sarpa is the serpent of time within Vedic astrology. And this concept of Kala Sarpa Yoga is one of the conditions that we find within Vedic astrology that is considered to be a very difficult state of being when all of the chart is contained within the boundaries of the nodes. And that is exactly what we're seeing here within this chart, which gives us the condition of Kala Sarpa Yoga. It's considered to be a very malefic state in general. And when we see Kala Sarpa Yoga, like much of our 2020, we had all of heaven contained within the nodes, which was a Kala Sarpa Yoga experience last year. This can be interpreted as being bitten by the serpent of time, or being bitten by the serpent of mortality, because essentially our concept of our human mortality is caught up within the concept of time. So Kala Sarpa Yoga is essentially a chokehold on time, and it is a sense of being bitten or being born into a malefic state of affairs, essentially. But that's one of several considerations, and that's also just a brief understanding of what Kala Sarpa Yoga can indicate. As everything, there are layers there as well. So that is it in terms of aspects to the ascendant. The next thing that we do is planets in the ascendant. We don't have to type them down. You could see them just as well as me, but for all intents and purposes, we have Jupiter, we have Neptune, we have the Uranus. We know that the Mercury is not in the ascendant by virtue of the 5-degree rule, but we also know that we are on the fence as to whether or not this Uranus is in the ascendant as well for that same reason. And then the last thing that we'll take a look at is the ruler of the ascendant, which, as we know, for Capricorn, it is indisputably Saturn. Okay, good. Let's just take a tiny look at the planetary hour ruler, just because the planetary hour ruler also has a bit of information that it gives us. So this person has the moon as their planetary hour ruler, which is interesting. So now to the interpretation of this chart. With Capricorn rising, this person has a cardinal earth sign ruled by Saturn rising. And what that means is that the earth is going to be their chief operating system within this lifetime. And what that means is that this person is going to be born into a world where they are naturally seeking earth and earth-based experiences. And what that looks like is this person being born and their internal fuel being the fuel of pragmatism, being the fuel of practicality, and being the fuel of concrete relationships to the world around them. When we have Capricorn rising, we get a sense that by virtue of the earth within this person is going to want to have a strong relationship to the ground beneath their feet. And more than anything else, the security of that ground beneath their feet is going to be a major importance for them. They know that that security brings a sense of comfort and a sense of ease. They know that that security brings a sense of wealth and a sense of abundance. And they also know that that security brings a sense of responsibility and a sense of being beholden to the world around them. So this earth-based person, knowing that intrinsically their desire is to find earth, their desire is to be grounded, their desire is to stabilize, they're going to step forward in the world as a person who is seeking out opportunities to further increase their stability within the world. Now, this is only apparent by way of the ascendant. The ascendant is not the only thing that maketh a woman. There are other factors within this chart that causes this person to be who they are, or rather, that reflects the internal nature of this person. And we will have to search through this chart to see if this chart supports this earthy pursuit. Just as a spoiler, the chart does not support this earthy pursuit. And we're going to see why. So the first thing that we see with the earth as the chief operating system is I desire to establish stability within the world. I show up within the lives of others as a source of stability, someone who is practical, someone who is dependable, someone who other people know that they can rely on, because by virtue of me being able to do that, I figure out my role within society. And my role within society is to be responsible for the stability of society, and I readily take that role onto myself. These are some of the things that we find within the earth native in general. I, through the things within my life, create the foundation from which other things can grow, and from which other people can grow, and from which other people can feel a sense of nurture and support, because people look to me to be the stable one within the group, is purely through the earth. The cardinal earth says that this person has the ability to mobilize that desire to find stability, probably more so than any of the other earth signs. And because they have this movable nature to earth already, they also have this internal understanding that indeed this earth beneath my feet does move. And the person who knows that the earth beneath their feet moves because they've either been in a mudslide or an earthquake or some other natural disaster that causes the earth beneath them to give way, is always searching to find more stable earth to establish their heels in. And they're always searching to find a greater sense of grounded practicality within the world that allows them to feel as if this world will not give way. And so therefore we find that being within the heart of this person having a cardinal earth sign rising, this knowledge that the earth indeed does give way. And therefore, since I know that the earth gives way, how can I find a greater relationship to things that are permanent? And how can I mobilize myself in the direction of creating things that have a sense of a permanent value in this life, where essentially nothing at all lasts forever? How can I create the farce of permanence insofar as my personal security is concerned in this world where nothing itself is permanent? Those are some of the questions that the Capricornian native finds themselves asking by virtue of the cardinal earth nature. Now, this Capricorn is also ruled by Saturn. And Saturn, as we know, is the furthest visible planet that can be seen with the naked eye. And so there is a sense that upon Saturn is projected our sense of responsibility, our sense of gatekeeping, our sense of someone to hold the environment around us stable for the rest of us to experience that environment in a stable and a secure and a balanced sort of way. So upon the Saturnian native is projected all of the stuff of the world. All of the things within this world that require responsibility is projected upon the Saturnian native, and the Saturnian native finds themselves in positions where they are often taking care of others at a far sooner time than is necessary or than is even their rightful due based on their age. The Saturnian person steps forward into a state of responsibility for others at a far younger age than other people around them. Herein comes the Pluto semi-sextile. The semi-sextile of Pluto to this ascendant tells us that this person has foisted upon them a sense of a forced initiation that they themselves were not prepared for. The semi-sextile of Pluto to the ascendant causes this person to feel as if they are forced beyond the threshold of having to grow up faster than other people, because probably they found themselves responsible for other people at a very early age. And the other people who they might find themselves responsible for are their siblings. Here in this chart, we find the ruler of the third house is in the first house, and the third house is representing the siblings. Therefore, when my siblings are in my first house, my siblings are having a far greater impact on my life than is necessary. Because within me, my siblings find their hopes and their dreams and the fulfillment of their desires, essentially. But the effect of that upon me may be a sense of an overly burdened disposition, that I am overly burdened by the needs and the requirements of my siblings. And those needs and requirements take up far too much of my space, and they take up far too much of my personal autonomy. And it also takes up far too much of my personal sense of freedom. We find Jupiter ruling the third house. Therefore, my personal sense of freedom is caught up within the responsibilities to which I am beholden in terms of my siblings. So there's a lot going on here insofar as the siblings are concerned. If there are siblings, as of now, we are not certain whether or not there are siblings, because I haven't asked the question, which I normally would, but I won't. But if there are siblings, that can be a major point of consideration. If there are not siblings, and if this third house is simply representing the early childhood community as well as the early childhood education, what we find here is a sense of displeasure in terms of the early childhood education that this person may have received. And what we find here is a sense of blockage in terms of their relationship to that education. Now, here we can see and say that potentially the education did something to this person, or potentially someone within the educational body around which this person found themselves growing up did something to this person, and that therefore left an indelible mark upon the life of this person in a way that is less than positive. And we say in a way that is less than positive because here we have the Jupiter in the sign of its fall, which cannot be thought of as being a positive indication at all. And we also have the Jupiter ruling the 12th house. So with Jupiter in the sign of its fall, as well as ruling the 12th house, we get a sense that there is something within my immediate environment which is actively working against me. And that thing within my immediate environment that may be actively working against me may specifically be my sibling, because of the ways in which this Jupiter is implicated within the meaning of the sibling within this chart. Or it may be someone within my early childhood educational environment who is the one who I may have been having these fundamental breakages with, or who is the one who I may have been having these fundamental issues with as a child growing up. The fingerprint of this person is still here, essentially, upon this person's first house. Now, if we were to view Jupiter psychologically, we could say that this Jupiter affords this person a more jovial nature, so that there is a constant sense of optimism within the life of this person, which is peculiar because the ruler of the first house is this Saturn in Pisces. And Saturn in Pisces, for the most part, is the combination of one getting lost within the world, as well as of one getting lost within themselves. Saturn is completely antithetical to the things that either of the Jupiter signs wants to do. And therefore, both of the Jupiter signs, both Pisces as well as Sagittarius, because we know that Jupiter is very much the ruler of Pisces, and there's a reason for that. And if you haven't heard my spiel on that, please stick around. But what we see here is that this person's environment around them is possibly not supportive in terms of this person feeling a sense of their own stability within the world. And we say this because with Capricorn ruling this ascendant, or rather with Saturn ruling this ascendant, we would want for Saturn to be standing on far more solid ground than it's standing on within this Pisces. So the things that the Saturn wants to erect, that stability that Saturn wants to find within the world, gets, in a sense, washed away by virtue of its placement within Pisces, because Saturn wants to establish the mountain, whereas Pisces wants to become the ocean. So here we see the mountain within the middle of the ocean that gets eroded by virtue of its indebtedness to the ocean for allowing it to exist. And so the person who has Saturn in Pisces ruling this ascendant in this manner is a person who oftentimes lives with a fundamental sense of altruism in terms of them wanting to be supportive for everyone, them wanting to give back to everyone, them wanting to take care of everyone. They want to take care of the birds and the trees and the bees and the ocean and the animals and the children and the flowers and the plants. So there's that aspect of the Saturn in Pisces. But the other aspect of the Saturn in Pisces is this dilution of the self. And what is essentially this inability of the self to rally itself around a single effort, or this inability of the self to rally itself around a single source of life direction. We have further corroboration of this because the sun in this chart, which is sextiling the ascendant, is in Pisces in both the decan of Pisces as well as the Dodecata Moria of Pisces. And so therefore we have the most Pisces version of a sun in aspect to this ascendant, which is corroborating what we've already said. For these people, they live in the world without skin. They live in the world fundamentally so permeable that everything within their world impacts them. But when we see a disposition like that, we have to ask ourselves, why? Why should anyone be so deeply impacted by all of the tides of change within their world? What is it within their environment that possibly has not served the constitution of a very firm sense of self, or the constitution of a very firm sense of the individuality that this person themselves has? Why does this person melt? Melt within relationships, melt within their responsibilities, melt within the relationship that they have to their siblings? Why does this chart set up this person in such a manner, whereas as we look around this chart, we see the evidence of the melting of the individual into the broader collective ocean, is the question that we ask with this Saturn here in Pisces. But it's also a question that we ask with the Sun in the D3, as well as the D12, as well as the domicile that is Pisces itself. There is a permeableness, and that permeableness becomes a sensitivity. And for the Capricornian person, the sensitivity bequeathed to it by Pisces is a problem. And the reason why it's a problem is because so invested is the mountain goat in its upward ascent in life that if it starts to lose that sense of central directiveness that it has by being Saturn ruled, it essentially loses itself. If it starts to forget why it came here, it essentially loses itself. And what we end up finding in a situation like this is a person who does have this great amount of sensitivity, where they can be empathetic and where they can understand everything that everyone around them is feeling and thinking and perceiving. But we also end up with a lack of boundaries. And we also end up with a sense of porousness in terms of the boundaries of this person, which would be completely fine if this person had a Cancer rising, because there is something within the heart of the watery people in general for their boundaries to be pressed upon. However, with Capricorn rising ruled by Saturn, all that ends up creating within the life of this person is, yes, the desire to do for many people, and yes, the desire to hold the responsibilities of many people within their hands, but it also brings up a fundamental sense of stress, as well as a fundamental sense of dissatisfaction within the nature of the world and within the nature of their lives as it currently is. And it's the nagging sort of dissatisfaction that can never fully be articulated. And it has a psychosomatic effect of lodging itself within the heart of the person's experience when we have this Saturn and Pisces here, because there's never really the understanding of why am I so sensitive? Why does everything affect me? Why does the colors in this room affect me? Why do all of the smells affect me? Why do I take on with such a great level of intensity the things of the world, as well as the emotional stuff of the world? The sort of disposition that this person ends up having is one that is so sensitive that it oftentimes makes it difficult for this person to really tap into a deep sense of trust in terms of the environment. And the reason why it makes it difficult for this person to tap into a deep sense of trust in terms of the environment is because it is already under the perception that it is correctly perceiving the thoughts and the emotions of everyone. It is already under the perception that it is already correctly perceiving the thoughts and the emotions of everyone. And therefore, by virtue of that, what we find within this person is the tendency for something that may not even be that big becoming huge within their lives. Something that may be overlooked by other people becoming a complete mountain within their lives that seems insurpassable or unsurpassable because they feel that much more deeply than the people around them. And this sets up within itself some of the natural systems of escape that we've come to know about Pisces. But we also have Neptune rising within this first house, which is also coming with that message of the self that needs to escape. That Neptune is having its relationship to both the moon as well as the Saturn. And so it's amplifying this internal desire to escape, this internal desire to flee, this internal desire to swim, this internal desire to let go of all of these responsibilities and give back to Caesar what belongs to Caesar is essentially what the Neptune is doing. But the Neptune is also investing and imbibing this person with the Jesus complex. And the Jesus complex becomes, if I can just help one more person, if I can support one more person, if I can let one more person feel held, feel supported, feel seen, feel attended to, then the world will be a better place. What that sets up is a tendency for this person to possibly be taken advantage of within the world by other people who will see that lack of boundaries within this person and use that as a means by which to push forward their own agenda. So that's a lot. Now, the next thing that we see going on within this chart is that the Saturn is in the third house, which is the rule of the ascendant is in the third house, i.e., I am in the house of my siblings, or I find myself deeply caught up within the lives of my siblings. But from a more psychological perspective, that third house can also be this person using their mind and using their imagination and using their reading and their writing and their skills on that sort of emotional cerebral level to be a means of them escaping the realities of the world around them. Now, the other thing that we find in this chart is that we've spoken about the Jupiter rising already and how that impacts things. The next thing is the Neptune. We've spoken about the Neptune and how that Neptune is impacting both the moon and the Saturn. The moon Saturn by itself is a peculiar combination because the moon Saturn by itself has to do with the fundamental restrictions within the genealogy of this person, the fundamental restrictions within the family life and within the family story of this person. And since we're talking about family, and since I'm doing my research on Chiron, let us bring on Chiron. Curiouser and curiouser. As many of you know, my theory is that when we have Chiron as the highest, or really not Chiron, but as many of you know, my working theory is the highest elevated planet within the chart is the planet that throws a ray over the entire life of the person. And here we have Chiron throwing its ray over the entire life of this person in opposition with this person's Venus, which is in the sign of her detriment. Now, from a universal perspective of Venus being how we participate with love and how we perceive love, we can say that this person's Chiron-Venus aspect brings about a sense of isolation within love within the life of this person. That this person goes out and seeks to find love passionately but deeply emotionally within the sort of passionate Mars way that we would expect for someone who has their Venus in Aries. But the Chiron opposition causes this love pursuits to be met with nothing other than a sense of isolation and aloneness in terms of love as a concept. But this Venus Chiron also brings a sense of isolation in terms of the mother, and isolation in terms of my ability to connect with and be connected to the mother. And the reason why we think that there's a sense of isolation or separation or segregation within the relationship that this person has between themselves and their mother is because Venus within this chart is ruling the 10th house of the chart. And insofar as the 10th house in traditional astrology is the house of the mother, this Venus in the sign of her detriment in opposition with Chiron is bringing a sense of estrangement in terms of the maternal connection. And that sense of estrangement in terms of the maternal connection may also pose to create a sense of estrangement in terms of how this person feels she should be loved and where this person feels she will be loved. And so what we end up finding is a sense of I have to do something in order to really attract and find the sort of love that is truly mine. I have to do something in order to dig my heels into the love that I'm supposed to have. And what that oftentimes causes to happen is this person working against themselves specifically for the purpose of finding that love which they're wanting to have. We say that because the Venus is having her Dexter square with the Jupiter, and Venus in Dexter square to Jupiter, Jupiter being the ruler of the 12th house, is Venus, Jupiter being the ruler of the 12th house, is saying that my self-undoing is caught up within my pursuit of love as a prospect. Now, the Venus being conjunct the South Node is also coming with its own implications. And the implications of Venus conjunct the South Node are that the things that Venus rules are being swallowed or devoured. Now, yes, this Venus is a bit wide to the South Node because we know that for us at Oraculos, a 4-degree orb is almost unfathomable. But for all intents and purposes, we have Venus conjunct the South Node, Venus already in the sign of her detriment. And so that sets up for this person a certain internal instability in terms of finding, connecting with, and really feeling a sense of diving into the love that is truly mine, or her diving into the love that is truly hers. Now, by declination, this person also has Venus, Saturn, and the Venus, Saturn by declination is bringing up once again this notion of the restriction that may be found in love, or the lack of sweetness in terms of the love relationship. When we find Venus, Saturn, there's a sense of there being a fly within your soup of love, essentially. That no matter what the manifestation of love is that you manifest for yourself, it always seems as if there's a fly within the soup of that love. And that fly is essentially unshakable. It could be that all of the partners you meet are married, but they're in an open relationship, and by virtue of them being in an open relationship, they're in a relationship with you, but they're still not yours solely through and through. It could be a sense of all of the partners that you meet are completely struggling with their own sense of their issues surrounding their fears and their insecurities and their own sense of lack of them being cared for within the world. And by virtue of that, instead of having a partner, I end up having a responsibility. And the responsibility becomes dealing essentially with the neuroses of the partners that I'm finding. So there are several implications as to what the Venus, Saturn, contra-parallel can indicate, as well as what the Venus, Chiron can indicate. But in either event, there's a sense that the greatest pain that is experienced within the context of the life of this person is, yes, the sense of estrangement in terms of the relationship with the mother, but also this sense of love being the wound, or the sense of love being the illness that I'm needing to heal within my life, within this lifetime. Now, the moon being the ruler of the 7th house, applying to that Saturn there, in the 3rd house, which is the terrestrial joy of the moon, says that for all intents and purposes, the partner is very comfortable. The partner is extraordinarily comfortable, where the partner finds his or herself. And the partner may also be comfortable with the things happening to the partner that prevents the partner from really being or really expressing the greatest amount of stability within the life of this person. Now, this is an interesting situation because the moon is in Pisces at 21 degrees, applying to this partner at 24 degrees Pisces. So technically, the conjunction that they have between each other should be an amazingly wonderful thing. However, we wonder by virtue of this Moon-Saturn conjunction, what are some of the compromises that this person, i.e. the native who owns this chart, what are some of the compromises she is having to do in order to sustain the type of love that she has with this person? Is there a sense of there's some stuff there with the moon Saturn, and it brings up a lot of questions. That is there a sense of this person, my partner, meets me here, and they find me here, and in me being found by my partner, I essentially find myself reliving the story of not fully being nurtured or not fully being fed within the context of my familial surroundings. And is my partner finding me where my partner finds me a rehashing of some of the earlier issues that I had, either with the sibling that we referred to earlier, or either with whosoever in terms of my early childhood education? Is there something, is there a rehashing? Do I feel a rehashing? Is there the seed of remembrance when my partner or with the partners that I'm finding, and do they bring up some of this stuff, essentially, from my early childhood, from my early community, of not fully being taken care of, or of not fully being supported, or of not fully feeling held, or of not fully feeling nurtured, or of feeling as if the nurture that I was given were dribbles of an affectionate word, as opposed to a bountiful overflowing of nurturing, the nurturing that one would expect to find from a household and a home. Now, the next thing as we wrap up this reading, the next thing that we find within this chart is that the ruler of this fourth house is Mars within this nocturnal chart. And the sun, if this were a daytime chart, would be Al-Mutan ruler of this fourth house. And specifically speaking, the triplicity ruler of this fourth house in this nocturnal chart is Jupiter. And Jupiter, as we've seen, is in the sign of its fall. Saturn, on the other hand, is in mutual reception with the Jupiter, because the Saturn is essentially peregrine where it is, and the Jupiter is in the sign of its fall, but the two of them are in each other's signs. So there seems to be something within this Jupiter that tries to be lifted up, or there seems to be something within this Jupiterian person that tries to be more noble, but still this Jupiterian person is taking up a great deal of space. The fourth house being ruled by this Mars, Mars picking up the conjunction with the Sun, Sun which is ruler of the eighth house of death, and Mars also in the square of the Pluto, both Sun and Mars in the square of this Pluto, makes us wonder about how the man within the life of this person makes us wonder about how the man within the life of this person have an overbearingly intense action over the life of this person, and whether or not that over-intensity manifests itself as an intense amount of pressure or force coming from these male figures within the environment, but particularly within the environment of the father, or particularly by way of the father, whether there is this overbearingly intense pressing pressure from the father within the environment by virtue of the Mars Pluto, whether there's an intense sense of secrecy and silence in terms of the father, as in we don't talk about dad, by virtue of the Mars-Pluto, or whether we know that Pluto is the god of the underworld, and the god of the underworld is only 2 degrees of separation away from death, whether there's a sense of a Plutonian change that occurs within the environment, possibly at a very young age, possibly at the age of 2 years old, that causes this person to feel a sense of fatherlessness, or that causes this person to feel without insofar as the father is concerned. By virtue of the sun, if we move the sun forward, if we direct that sun comes to our Pluto by the age of 2 years old. So these are some of the questions that we have in terms of the household and home. What is the secretness within the household and home? What is it that we are not speaking about within the household and home? And also with this Mars and the Mars and the Pluto, how has that essentially forced the hand of the sort of life that I now have? And how do I now subconsciously respond to life based on some of those previous Plutonian experiences? So I look soft and gentle and loving and kind on the surface, but truthfully, there's a volcano here. And truthfully, with that volcano being here, that volcano is specifically here because I have been overly pressed upon by the environment. And by virtue of me being overly pressed upon by the environment, other people within the environment, whether within my household and home, specifically with the siblings, possibly with teachers from school, all of these things. And I say teachers in school, not in the way that all teachers, impact a person, but the one teacher, the one teacher who touched too much, or the one teacher who really left too much of a mark on the life of a person. That's sort of the question that we're asking within this context. And the final thing with this is, because this is the last piece that we'll talk about before we wrap up, the final thing with this is my sensitivity has caused for there to be a deep wellspring of passion, but also a deep wellspring of what might be considered to be pain, and also a deep wellspring of my own overly intense emotion, and also a deep wellspring of my own hidden sources of volcanic fire within myself. And if given the opportunity to show itself, that volcano is there. And because my life is so deeply attenuated between the deep sensitivity that I have because of the impact my environment has had on me, as well as the deep inner hidden passion and intensity and fire that is there, it feels within myself, within yourself, that you're living as these two very separate people. The deeply, intensively, sensitively gentle, who the entire world has had to say about, who the entire world has left its imprint on, but also this deep, independent fire and flame and passion that comes up as a response to that. But because that deep fire, intensity, pain, and passion hasn't been properly modulated into the personality, it stands as a harsh, or it stands at a harsh juxtaposition to who you actually are. So this other fire portion is never expected of you. People don't expect that to be there. But they find out that it's there. And when it comes up from within the depths of you, it comes up with far more intensity and far more depth and far more overwhelming outpouring than probably even the situation that you're in requires, because your response, your reaction isn't the response or the reaction from this moment and the stimulus that has occurred within this moment, but it is the response and the reaction that comes from all of the moments and all of the things and all of the perceived injustices and all of the ways in which people may have perceived you as being weak, and all of the things are behind the response that eventually erupts forward. It's an interesting chart. And we're grateful for this sharing, and we're grateful for this offering, because the chart, or a chart like this, has the ability to move within the world and really set out on a venture to figure out who this person is or who you are based on your own merits. Because truthfully, with a chart like this, it says that you really owe nothing to anyone. You know, you don't owe anything to your community anymore. You don't owe anything to your household anymore. You definitely don't owe anything to your siblings anymore. You owe nothing to anyone. And as a result of that, as a result of you already paying your 7 pounds of flesh, in terms of the situations that you may have gone through, in terms of some of the traumas that you may have gone through, there is nothing else necessary for you to give the world. And therefore, now all you have ahead of you is a grand canyon of possibility by which to find yourself. And that, above all other things we can give to ourselves, that is golden. So Godspeed in that endeavor. All right, whose chart is this?
Hi, Michael. This is Celeste. This is the chart of a good friend's young adult daughter that I've watched grow up.
Okay, Celeste, and on a scale of 1 to accurate, where did this chart fall?
Oh, quite accurate. There's definitely been a sense of strong responsibility, of kind of just emanating from the person. She's super sensitive, even describes when she sees people, she sees colors associated with the people. She said it's like the synesthesia is the term she used. And it helps her determine whether she can trust that person. Okay, and it's been very active through her life. Yes, she's felt that she's had to take care of her siblings. She has a younger sister, and they lost their father when she was 9. And the father was kind of a domineering presence, and he died of alcoholism. So that's maybe the secrecy stuff. I don't think the daughter knew so much about it. And I can't really speak. All what I know about the early childhood education is that she really struggled within it, struggled to make friends, struggled to have a good situation. And she even said to her mom, you know, I feel so sensitive. I don't feel like I'm being understood. And then I get into arguments with people. And at her age, I can observe now she still struggles with the argument thing. She doesn't really know how to negotiate that. She feels that she wants to help people and that maybe she comes on too strong. There's that kind of deal. But she can definitely blow up. And she talks about trying to negotiate that because it hurts her relationships with guys. And that's very frustrating to her. Super jovial person though, you know, you kind of want to take care of her. You want to help her. But there's also this, like you said, volcano of things. And that's hard to do when you're not the person, you know, when you're just kind of watching it. So, yeah, she feels a lot of pain in trying to create relationships. And the sensitivity level is super, super crazy high. And I've even joked with her mom saying, Jesus, she could figure out a way to monetize that sensitivity. It might be useful to her. And she wants to go into a healing field. And, you know, maybe she's just finding her way in the dark with this. Maybe that's what this chart's about. I don't know. But it's hard to watch her struggles because she seems like a very good-hearted person, you know, and just feels like the world is too hard. And she wants to meet it with an open heart, but it kind of throws her back time and again. Yeah, that's all.
Thank you so much for that, Celeste. This feeling of being without skin, it's a feeling that we have when there is a heavy Chironian influence. And as we can see, the only planet within this chart, or the only celestial factor that isn't falling within this chart as being Kala Sarpa Yoga, or within the framework of the two nodes, is Chiron. So Chiron is the point of release for this person, which is, yes, Chiron, the wounded healer, but Chiron is the way in which this person liberates themselves from the harsh bite of the serpent of time, that is the Kala Sarpa Yoga effect that we're finding within this chart. Also, the Sun Pluto is another exit point for that. But with Sun Pluto, given the disposition of this entire chart, every struggle feels like a mountain. There is no minor infraction within the life of this person. Everything feels like moving through the valley of the shadow of death. And so we do look at these people and think that these people struggle more than others, because most assuredly they do. But like you said, Celeste, if she can find a way to monetize that, and if she can find a way to turn that into a profession, then she has what it takes to go into the healing work that she desires and truly make a difference within the world. And then yet, there is still the caveat that should a person like this, who has not yet fully established a firm sense of their own boundaries, enter healing work. Because when the boundaries are as weak as they are within this person, what ends up happening is this psychic infiltration of the pains of those we're trying to heal. And so, yes, we feel as if this person will be a wonderful healer, but at the same time, we need this person to get extensive training in whatever healing practice she chooses to pursue, because too sensitive is the nature that she already has.
Thank you, Mychal.
You're very welcome. And that is it for this evening. Thank you all for being here. I truly always appreciate seeing all of you. And until next time.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. Did anyone learn anything at all tonight?
Yes.
Yes.
Absolutely. so much.
Thank you.
A lot. Thank you.
Every week there's more to learn.
Every week there's more to learn. Am I dreaming? Have a wonderful evening. If you need me, you know how to reach me. If you need to know about courses we have coming up, check out the website. Also, like I said, the FOCA, the Foundations of Classical Astrology course, which is the prerequisite for our Excellence in Astrology program. The last one I'm offering for 2 years is this September 8th. So if you want to get in on that, please, you need to let me know as soon as possible, because the registration is already open. So be well in the world, my darlings. Thank you for coming to class. I love you all. Au revoir.
What?
Au revoir.